What is good, everybody, man? Welcome into the Bluebloods. Listen, like I told y'all, we took a very long break. Just myself and the coaches corner, man. This is our first show in a minute. We had to bring it back live. So, man, appreciate y'all tuning in. Promised y'all 2 live streams this week, man. We chopped it up all about FCS football. Y'all's boldest takes on Monday. You guys had some outrageous ones, man. I've been loving the comments and late submissions. So we'll have to revisit that soon. But we had to come on the coach's corner. Y'all know how we do it. We'll talk a little bit of FCS, but this is going to be HBCU, FCS centered in terms of the SWAC, MEAC, throw in some A&T, Tennessee State, some things like that, man. But appreciate y'all tuning in. Of course, my co-host, my guy, Coach Fred, Alcorn State wide receiving coach. Coach, how you been, man?
Man, been good, man. Just trying to relax, get things together during this off season, and we've started into summer workouts, which is going to roll right into camp. And before you know it, man, it'll be season.
I'm so excited, Matt, because like this week I'm leaving tomorrow to head to Dallas for UAC Media Day, and I'm like the fact that media days are already here. I know it's going to be a quick turnaround, man. Those fall camp rumors are going to be dropping. I'm going to be, I'm just pumped for it. But I know there we got a lot of topics, man. We're going to talk a little bit about FAMU. The Kamari Stephens news is huge. I addressed it a little bit on Monday, but I really want to break it down from just my perspective in the media. And of course, Coach Fred, as he's dealt with players entering, coming back, leaving in the portal. We're going to hit the SWAC Media Day, some attendance that shocked both of us, man. Coach, we talked on the phone about we were surprised a few people got selected to represent their school. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll also give our predictions for SWAC preseason offense and defensive player of the year. And we'll end off talking about first-year head coach expectations, all the first-year head coaches from across HBCU football. There's some big ones. We'll talk about what would be an A+ year, what do we think is probably the year they're going to have, and really kind of break down what we think of each roster. But we got to get into this, Coach. This came just out of the blue. I mean, the SWAC drops the attendees for the SWAC Media Day, and less than 2 hours later, one of FAMU's representatives that probably was going to be in competition for SWAC Defensive Player of the Year, was a first-team All-SWAC selection, was one of the leaders in sacks in the conference last year, just comes out of the blue and re-enters the portal after he kind of affirmed his commitment in a big video, explored his options in the portal. For you, Coach, looking at this, what were your first initial thoughts when you saw this announcement?
When I saw the announcement, the first thing came to mind was that somebody from a higher level came and dropped a huge duffel bag. Maybe not Louis, but a huge, duffel bag to put, that thought in the back of that young man's mind. It's a different age, Blue, with this whole NIL deal and all that, man. It's a different age. That was my first thought.
You know, so I'll give you my initial reaction. When I first saw it, and Coach, I want to get your thoughts on this because you see this with high school players sometimes where you recruit a kid so hard, sometimes you over recruit him, and he thinks he thinks he's getting more than he's actually getting. The head kind of gets in. Rodney Gardner, a great defensive line coach now at Tennessee, coached at Auburn or all across the SEC, said his biggest thing was he would recruit guys so hard that when they got to camp, they would be hard to coach because you pump them up and pump them up. And it's only good interactions when you first give that first bit of discipline or first bit of coaching, they kind of pull back and don't take it well. My initial thought was Willie Simmons and this staff knew that they could not lose him. So when he was in the portal the first time, go explore your options. But Coach, the phone never hung up. They were calling. They were checking. He was still getting his degree. He was still on campus. They were recruiting him really hard. And so I wonder if his expectations got too big and FAMU wasn't willing to meet those expectations once he got back on campus.
I'm with you on that because I think the outside forces can say that they can bring more. I want to be here, but over there they're offering me this. So what can you do? Like, I really like the coach's corner, Blue. I mean, I appreciate it. We started this thing, man. I came to you. You were like, let's do it. But these cats over here, man, they saying they can do this. So what up, Blue? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that that right now, along with what you said with about the coaching part of it, I think you get to a point to where some of them actually feel like, yo, you talking to me? Like, no, I came back because of you, and you talking to me like this. It's a blurred line now. NIL, I love it. It is what it is, but also I think the kids have to have a level of reality, so to speak. Um, we deal with it every day. Uh, I won't say the young man's name, but he went through spring with us, and then after spring, a week later, uh, I'm going in the portal. Like, what? Wait, what? You went through the spring. If you had that thought, why did you even do all that? Why not just go from the beginning and be done with it? Well, that phone, like you said, don't stop. Social media doesn't stop. You continue to see you're strolling, people doing this, doing that, and I think sometimes the level of reality becomes larger than what the situation and where you are is.
The only thing I don't like, listen, I have no problem with him going to find a better situation for them. I want every player to go to the whatever they think is best. I'm cool with it.
Do
Like
you?
I get it, and it hurts me sometimes. Like I've been vocal about it. My guy Tyler Hudson, he went from Central Arkansas to Louisville, had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Man, this guy could have went down as one of the greatest receivers of all time in FCS. He had that opportunity, but I get he had to go do his thing at Louisville. He went and killed it, no surprise. But at the same time, I felt like, and I'm not saying he owes FAMU anything, but in the same aspect, he kind of does. Like you owed it to them to make that decision before they went out on a limb and announced you were going to media day to represent the university. Because to me, you don't have to stay. Like I'm not saying you owe them that. It's just you owe them the respect and to not embarrass them because I don't care if it was FAMU, Jackson, Alcorn State, Valley, if a coaching staff trusts you and puts you in a leadership role and it was like, we want you to represent our university on ESPN on a national stage in front of all the media, for you to go out and embarrass the same coaches who gave you an opportunity to play on the biggest stage, to help develop you into an all SWAC talent, because that just doesn't happen overnight. So for me, I just felt like there was almost like that was disrespectful in my opinion.
And I'm with you, because, and again, I don't know his background fully, but when you were coming out of high school and there was no NIL, who was there to give you the opportunity? And I'm all for the player. I'm all for doing what's best for you, but there's a way you do that. You know what I mean? There's a way you go about it. Um, I thought it was, I don't want to say a blind sucker punch, but it was a blind sucker punch. But I will tell you this: some of some of the responses that I saw on Twitter was downright hilarious about it. Jabs to Coach Simmons, who's my guy, to the FAMU fans, from other fans who I won't say, but some of those responses, because I read comments, some of those comments to that news was downright hilarious, man. Downright hilarious.
I think really and truly that's what separates the SWAC from some of the other conferences that I personally cover is that like it's all in good fun. Like obviously no one's hating off, but like and as much as I love Coach Simmons, I can't wait to talk to him next week. But I probably won't, I don't know if I'll ask him about it, but he did kind of bring it on himself just a little bit because
Well,
as
and,
soon as he
and
came
someone
back, he took
got it.
that shot. Like
Yeah,
I get it. You got to get that same energy back. So I don't blame anyone for taking the shot at him.
but the internet is, I mean, once you put it out there, somebody has screenshotted it, they've saved it, and it was almost like they couldn't wait to throw that back out, man. It was like, how do you say? I'm trying to clear pictures every day to get space. How do you save that tweet from that many months ago, expecting to be able to use it again? I mean, it's some brilliant people out on Twitter, man. If they would just use their power for good, man, we would just be so much better.
I think, man, the fact I've never seen, and I want to hit one more point on this before we move on, but real quick, I've never seen like karma spin the block so fast. I mean, it was so quick. Like I thought it was gonna be like September after the game that Jackson was gonna be able to use those screenshots and everything. I'm talking about it wasn't even a month. Like they got to, I mean, it was so fresh because there's shows that you could find on other people's platforms, etc., where I mean, there were whole shows made about it, and they and fans talking about, well, you guys lost this player, and I mean, the back and forth was amazing. I'm telling you, the Orange Blossom Classic, the Blue Blossom Classic, whatever you want to call it, that game this year, with all the twists and turns we've seen through the offseason, that game's going to be legendary.
The week leading up to it is going to be absolutely crazy. Like, you know, when you say that before we move on, I need somebody to kind of coach me through Twitter because I miss things. I don't know how they were spot up. I mean, they were like right there for it. Like it posted, say, at 12:01 and it came at 12:05. They were right there. And I'm like, you know, my job doesn't allow me to continue to just, you know, go Twitter. How do I keep it, you know, updated just right?
It's amazing, man. But you know, the last point I want to say is there was something a little bit fishy with the
Oh,
like
yeah.
for me with the
We're
oh
doing
man,
it
that
live.
was good.
We're doing it live.
Oh man. But there was something a little bit fishy about his transfer video when he announced he was coming back. And I want to get your thoughts on this and we'll move on to the next one. But he told Coach Simmons he was coming back, made a whole commitment video wearing another team's apparel who was recruiting him where a lot of people thought he would go. So like the twist of this would be like if Jarvion entered the portal and he committed to you guys wearing Southern Miss merch or who do you want to who's the Jackson State guy? I mean that entered the portal and came back. Like JD Martin putting his name in the portal, coming back, committing to Jackson wearing Southern Miss stuff. Like that would have never flown for so problems. Like for some programs. Like that's unacceptable.
Well, and it's like that in our building. You know, we've got kids that have come from other places. We've got high school kids. You know, coach really puts an emphasis on, you know, high school senior shows up and he comes to a meeting, the first meeting, the third meeting, wearing a USC t-shirt. No, we're not doing that. Nobody at USC is wearing an Alcorn t-shirt. You know, we'll get you something. In that situation there, if he rips it off and it's a FAMU shirt underneath, I'm like, man, that was spot on. But to go that way, I just, you know, to each his own. I don't know who. A lot of times, I think me and you kind of talked off record. A lot of times, I don't know who the you know the kids have in their corner, who they have in their ear that's advising them. But the person that was advising, hey, do this video. Whoa, stop. Hey, put on your fam shirt or just put on a regular T-shirt and go about it that way. But you know, you never know what the motive was or whatever with the video. But now that's all out the window because we're here. Like you said, less than a month away from doing that.
Yeah.
So you know, I would be really interested in getting in and figuring out from him his perspective. Like, dude, what happened? You know, all of a sudden, I hit him up. He hadn't hit me back. You know, maybe we're a lateral move, but I did hit him up.
I will say he posted that Troy offer almost before he posted his transfer portal announcement. I mean, it came like he sent those tweets at the exact same time on different devices. It felt like, I mean, and I should have known something was kind of up because I had an interview scheduled with him and it kind of fell through suspiciously. And so I had a weird feeling about it, and I didn't say anything just because you never know with guys. I mean, people flake out of interviews. It is what it is. Like it's cool, but something just didn't feel right. And the fact, and if he ends up committing to UCF, that video is going to live in SWAC Facebook group. And like hit, I mean, that's going to be pinned. Like he told FAMU he was coming back with the shirt of the team that he was going to end up leaving y'all for in the first place.
That you played the prior season.
And are going to play again because that school is right down the highway.
You know, B, I'll tell you, man, it's a dirty game out here. And one of the things that, you know, I don't think people really understand, we have it we have it a little more uphill than the FBS, the Group of Five, the Power Five. We've got to recruit to come into our program, and then we've got to recruit to keep in our program. No matter what anybody says, there are people above us in FBS that are actively recruiting kids off of your roster. No need to name names, but just know that this has actually happened. I mean, this is happening. That young man for us that left, he didn't just leave because he had a thought that he could go do this. Someone reached out to him, and it's perfectly legal. It is what it is. But now in our program, Coach McNair constantly harps on the fact of, hey guys, let's do a great job in recruiting and recruiting our own. I don't think we end a staff meeting without him saying, hey, make sure your guys are good. And that's what you got to do now. So it's just the way of the world.
Moving on, but I think my eye-opening moment, now that I've been more involved in the recruiting with On3 and some of these recruiting sites, I was told by someone who I really respect, who's a senior recruiting guy for On3. He told me that if a program is just learning a kid is in the portal when he makes his announcement, he's about 2 to 3 weeks late on that recruitment.
Yeah, I believe that, because there are signs. Looking back, the kid that left us, even though he went through spring, he was distant from where he would come to your office and be like, Coach, let me get something out of the refrigerator. Coach, let me do this. And this was a kid that I recruited. And I haven't got the text yet or the phone call yet, Coach, that I'm leaving. I just heard that from the other coach, from the kids. So there are signs, like you said, if you pay attention to it, like a kid that's always at the facility is now missing in action. It's probably being talked about.
Yeah, and I mean the avenues that I've learned that people use in terms of going through high school coaches, knowing family members, and just I mean the ways people get around that tampering rule are just insane, man. But to keep the show kind of pushing on, we're gonna hit before we get to SWAC Media Day, man. We had to address this because I didn't make a. I've been writing more about recruiting than I've really been making videos. So y'all can go check out all the FCS recruiting news on the bluebloodscfb.com, man. But one of the big commitments in the SWAC was 3-star quarterback Chris Martin committing to Alcorn. He's a top 110 quarterback in the country, a top 160 player in the state of Georgia, had offers from Georgia Tech, Troy, who we just got done talking about, Georgia Southern, UConn, Yale, Alabama State. I mean, some big programs. Coach, talk a little bit about this guy and how this really kind of came together.
Coach Jason Phillips does a great job in Georgia. We got DeMar Franklin, who's here on campus, big time kid out of Georgia as well. The thing with Chris is, his dad, when he first put the ball in his hand, and it's a true story, when he first put the ball in his hand, hey, we're going to model your game after, God rest his soul, Steve McNair. So he modeled his game from yay high up to where he is now. And then when he gets the opportunity to get the offer and to actually come, and he's sitting in, Coach McNair's office, and, Coach has got a picture of his brother up there. He's walking around campus. He's seeing the Safe Center that's named after, Steve. It was one of those deals where if you would have been there and you would have saw, the way the kid, just lit up, you would have thought we were at Georgia Tech. You'd have thought those, he's walking through those facilities, that kind of thing. He was just as happy as he could be to be walking the same grounds as the late, great Air and to be with the big brother. And like I said, and Coach Phillips just, hammered that deal, got it done. And he's a great kid. I think we're good. But like we told him, the phone calls aren't going to stop. They're only going to pick up. So now we really have to do a good job of hammering it shut, and getting him there on campus. And he's turned into a recruiter for us as well.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing because if I'm not mistaken, the director of recruiting at On3, which is who has him ranked as a 3-star, said I think there's 3 more like rankings updates. So, and especially in the state of Georgia, a big senior year in at the left because he plays what 6A in
Yep.
Georgia,
Yep.
bro. If you got a big year in 6A football in Georgia, that means something because that competition is crazy. I mean, Tiff County has produced some studs out of that. I mean, and he plays with some studs, but I think the interesting thing, and I think G talked about this on one of his shows, is that there's only been a select few quarterbacks to participate in the Elite 11 to come to the SWAC. Tyler Macon already on Alcorn's roster being one of those. I want to say Shador was in the Elite 11, and then there might be a handful of others. Devontae Kincaid maybe but participated. I don't really remember though. That was a long time ago, but this kid was in the Elite 11 regionals as a junior already and is probably going to go back next year. And this is a guy who led the region in passing yards as well, 25 passing touchdowns, first team all reach. I mean, he did it all and was an all-state honorable mention. When you look at that quarterback room, when you look at Macon, you guys have an outstanding true freshman that is going to be there this year. And now you add Christopher Martin. The fact that he isn't scared of competition speaks volumes to me because a lot of people will look at Macon and all the hype that he's getting going into preseason and being like, do I really want to compete with him for the next 2 to 3 years?
And it speaks to the kid. It speaks to, what's been put in him. And he knows that, and he's still, like you said, willing to accept it, to be where, I don't want to say dream, but to be where he pictured himself being there at Alcorn State. And the thing with us is we're gonna give it to you real. You've been there. We couldn't sugarcoat it if we wanted it to. You know what I mean? So he's seen exactly what it is he needs to see. As much as people think people don't matter in recruiting anymore, people still matter. We still matter. Like again, Coach Phillips had us off to him. Coach McNair coming in and closing that. And now Chris is recruiting to come with him. So that makes life easy. Who knows who he's going to be able to get to the table for us out of Georgia, out of Louisiana, out of Florida. And like G said, man, when you got that kind of room and all those guys are locked in, and for one thing, you can only go up. You can only go up,
Yeah. Oh, that's Andrew Body went to the Elite 11 too. My God, that Mr. Rick's in here. So yeah, Andrew was at the Elite 11 too. I want to say Davis might have been too. Alabama State's quarterback when he was at North Shore too. He could have been too. But the list is under 20, which is not many compared to however many quarterbacks played in the SWAC. Yeah, under 10 possibly. Yeah. So I will say, and KJ put it in the chat, the recruiting, not just in the SWAC. I do want to shout out the SWAC because this is really HBCU focused on this episode, but the FCS too. The recruiting that I've seen at the high school level this year, now that I've kind of been covering, I mean, I try to release 4 to 5 commitments every day, news. The level of talent that these guys are getting out of high school right now is ignorant. I mean,
again, B, you know it because you're in the game. I don't know if the true fan truly understands how much recruiting has changed in 3 years. We're not talking 5. We're not talking 10. In 3 years with the transfer portal, high school kids now, if you're not in the ESPN 300, it's rough sledding. And I hate it for those guys, but even at our level, as we tried to explain, we had 2 recruits on campus today. High school kids. At our level, coach wants to continue to recruit high school kids. But within our league, in order to stay at the top, because even though folks may say we're not at the top anymore, we're still at the top, you've got to be able to compete. When the people at the street are playing with 22-year-olds who have 2 years of college playing experience, you can't expect to compete when you got like Rod, our quarterback, who graduated early and went through spring ball, missed a week of spring ball to go back to his high school prom. You can't expect to compete with those guys who has those transfers for long, because the game doesn't allow you to just groom them anymore. It's about wins. Okay, we recruited the whole high school class for 2 years straight. We're going to take a black eye. Now, are you going to be willing to work with us, or are you going to boo us out, run us off, and then the next guy comes in and he looks like the greatest coach in the world? Well, he's playing with juniors now, who were high school seniors coming in. So the game's changed, man. It has completely changed.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, I know people love the transfer portal, and I said this on Monday's episode. Incarnate Word is going to be the litmus test for the FCS, I think, this year. If they go on to succeed with how much turnover they got and all the transfers that they got, it's going to change how other FCS teams approach the transfer portal, because right now there's not a lot of proof that just hitting the transfer portal delivers national championships. Because go
And I'm
ahead.
with you on that. Not to cut you off, I'm sorry. I'm with you on that. But I think you also have to be, from a coach's perspective, you have to be careful with that, because now you're talking about a bunch of guys. If they don't have multiple years, you're talking about a bunch of guys that are now 6-month rentals. Are they going to be
Yeah.
willing to buy in when it's no longer 75 degrees with a cool breeze? Now it's 98 degrees hot in the fourth quarter, no timeouts, and everybody's on you. Are they going to be vested enough in the program to be able to handle that moment? And that's the other thing that makes it tough when you're dabbling in that. You got to do some real. I'm talking about investigation to see what kind of kids you're actually getting. So, like you said, everybody will be watching, because it can go one or the other. Ain't no in between. It's either
No.
going over the top or it's going down fast.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, like Sam Herder did a great job. Of some I should pull I got to pull it up next time we do a show, but if I'm not mistaken, only like 2 or 3 programs increased their win total by 2 or more, and those were like the teams that brought in the most transfers. And if you look at the national champions, South Dakota State, North Dakota State, not built on transfers, and even the Celebration Bowl champions, Central and South Carolina State, those are high school kids. Like they don't have that, like their impact players were not transfers. So at the end of the day, like the proof right now, all the evidence, like if you're just an analytical person, where you use history and data to suggest what you should do, building through high school recruiting is the way to deliver championships. Like transfer portal's great, and you can fill certain needs in the portal. Because I mean, you look at Lindsey Scott. Like if you can land a Lindsey Scott for 1 year, probably go ahead and go land you a Lindsey Scott. But when you look at that Incarnate Word team, there were a lot of high school guys outside of Lindsey Scott that were major contributors on that team to make the run to the semifinals. You look at South Dakota State, man, I was doing their roster look. They only had one starter that transferred in, and it was the middle linebacker who transferred up from NAIA. They had like no D1 transfers on that whole team. That's, I mean, that's the proof. And you look at North Dakota State, they're not bringing in a bunch of transfers going to win national titles. And you look at the Montana schools as well, who have all been very successful recently. It's all been high school talent. So I think that's why I said Incarnate Word is going to be interesting. Jackson this year is going to be interesting, I think, because they brought in a lot of transfers as well. I think Incarnate Word and Jackson had the two most, if I'm not mistaken, is they both brought in over 20.
And they had coaching changes. So you're meshing uh, new players with new coaches into one culture. Now, are you going to be the coaches? I'm sure are brought into the culture. Now, are you going to get those guys to be vested? What guys are going to turn sour after camp who came in, transferred, and thought that they were going to be day one guys, and now they're not the day one starter? Is it going to go sour? They're going to work through it for a couple of weeks, or they're going to see it all the way through, that kind of thing. So you really have to do a good job on your background checks, man, because your culture that you've already have is going to be tested.
Yeah, and shout out to my guy Lindsey Scott, announced today, added to the staff at Texas State under GJ Kinney, who was his head coach last year. that Texas State staff is loaded with young guys and talent. And I will say, I was told by someone, I don't know exactly what his role is, if he's got an on the field role or more of an analyst role, but if he wants, he still can go play spring ball because he was drafted by both the USFL and XFL, and he might be able to go play and kind of keep that role just because Kenny, I think when you have that job as with your former head coach, I don't think he's going to try to hide the bag from you in terms of that. So we'll see how that kind of works out. But definitely shout out to Lindsey Scott, man, getting that opportunity. But coach media day,
Coach Kenny, for hiring, because he
yes,
helped him get that job, and it was only right for him to come back if he could help Lindsey in that capacity, man. Not a lot of guys do that. Hats off to him.
yeah, shout out to him. But man, SWAC Media Day coming up in very, very soon. I want to say it's the 25th over in Birmingham. The attendees have been announced. So there was a lot of speculation on that. A&M's bringing, of course, Donovan Eaglin, Zarian Hayes, Alabama State bringing Jawan Howell, Bubba. No surprise there. Alcorn's bringing Jarvion and Malachi Bailey. Bethune bringing Jimmy Robinson and running back Amari Hill Robinson at DB. You got Musa and Javin Morgan at defensive back is replacing Kamari Stephens in terms of their attendees, which I like that. Javin's a really great defensive back. Grambling, Sundiata, and Lewis bringing 2 defensive players. We're going to get into that. Jackson, J.D. Martin, Devontae Davis. Valley bringing Jamari Jones and Brandon Williams. PV bringing Ahmad Antoine and Keyshawn Johnson. Harold Blood and Jalen Campbell coming for Southern. No surprise here. Andrew Brody and Jacob Williams coming for Texas Southern. And Ryan Atkins and Anais Lukeman coming for UAPB. Coach, who, I guess, because me and you talked about on the phone we talked a little bit about this on the phone. Was there anyone that surprised you with who they're bringing to SWAC Media Day?
I don't want to call names, but I'll call scenarios. And I'll use us. If we bring anyone from offense other than Jarvion, I think that people are going to take that and run with it. Are you with me?
Yeah.
If Bluebloods has made this big hoopla from January up until 2 weeks ago about this quarterback that he's got, but he's not bringing him media day, that for me throws up a big question mark. And then bring in 2 defensive guys because it's media day. I think, I don't want to say it's rule, but I would say more tradition. You bring one from both sides. I don't know what goes into certain, because I'm not in those offices, but if you're bringing 2 from special teams, then you're not feeling really good about one or the other from offense and defense. And that's all I'm saying.
I think the quarterback one I think fits more than one school, but we'll leave it at that. But yeah, the 2 defensive players are interesting. I guess because I do know some programs don't like to bring newcomers. Just like I know that's the standard. So I get possibly that could be Hugh's thought is we're not bringing Miles Crawley because he didn't play for us last year, and I'm cool with that. But and I'm not saying Sundiata and Lewis don't belong there because both of those guys are outstanding players and they are great interviews. I love those guys. I got to talk to Sundiata after the spring game, but did Lyndon Rash not earn his opportunity to go show out at media day? That's a dog at wide receiver. He's probably a first team all SWAC selection preseason.
Yes. If he's not, I'll be very surprised.
I mean, I thought he kind of earned it. I'm not surprised at A&M. I think Eaglin, Zarion Hayes, good with that. Alcorn, obviously Jarvion had to go. And I think it was probably a toss-up between Malachi and Terrence, but I was good with either one of those going. And Bethune, hell, outside of Amari Hill Robinson, everyone else was kind of a toss-up for me because I didn't know who they had. So, yeah, new staff. So I get that. Yeah, exactly. So I get that. FAMU, not surprised. You got to bring Musa because that's the guy at quarterback. And then you were going to bring your top defensive player. And I figured the replacement, I am surprised because I told you this on the phone. I personally thought Isaiah Major was going to be the pick for defense replacing Kamari Stephens, but I'm not mad about Javin. That is an all SWAC player. I think him, Kendall and Isaiah Major. Like it had to be one of those three.
Yep, and I think it, like you said, it was put it in a hat and pick, and you couldn't go wrong in that situation.
Yeah, and I think Javin, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't a transfer, so that might have gave him the edge over Isaiah because
Grew
Javin's
up
been
over.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, he grew up in the program. We just talked about Grambling. I don't mind either of those, but I would have liked to see Lyndon Rash come at wide receiver. Jackson, I'm not. I think Devontae Davis was the obvious choice defensively. If you're not including newcomers, if you include newcomers, Asayas had a very strong case to represent Jackson State.
but I'm like you on that. I think media day and those type of situations are for guys that have kind of put in their
Yeah,
time. So I'm like you with that. I'm cool with not bringing a newcomer.
yeah.
But you know, as they say, man down, shot fired. There was no one else that had put in the time. That kind of thing.
Defensively, probably not. What outside of Devontae Davis, you're looking at maybe Kevrick Wiggins, maybe. I think
But
he's the
I'm good
only
with
other. Yeah, defensively, I think it had to either be him or Devontae. Because if I'm looking, linebacking core is completely new.
right.
Safety outside of safety DB outside of Wiggins, I think is going to be pretty new as well. So I don't mind that. Offensively, oh, you're looking at Evan Henry, maybe if you want to include him as someone who's been around the program. JD Martin, obviously, but then outside of that, I mean, what Rico Powers maybe would be the only other guy who I could
Now
think.
that would have been the name that I would have thought, just because he was throughout the run. He
Yeah,
was, he was spotty. He was in there. But again, uh, not in those rooms. Don't know what goes into those
yeah,
decisions. It's just me firing a shot.
yeah. Valley, I am surprised. I'll be
And
completely
we talked
honest.
about that. Yeah,
Yes,
about that.
deep into a quarterback battle, you have to be very careful with who you pick. And is this because for media and for fans, you're probably taking this as, hey, did Jamari Jones win that QB battle?
Like it's done. That's got to be the guy. And that's a
Because what
slippery.
happened here's what I'm going to ask you. What does it look like if you bring Jamari and he's not the first guy to hit the field come September?
Well, if he's not the first guy, the guy that's the first guy is like, why did he get to go? I mean, I'm just telling you, from a kid standpoint, we get back, why did he get to go? Or I clearly beat him out. Why is he the one going to media day?
Yeah.
Now is when it's a slippery slope. It really is.
Brandon Williams, I don't mind. I think he's probably the only guy left really on the defense that's kind
Yeah.
of earned his spot. I'm good with that. PV, don't hate it. Because if you're excluding newcomers, you can't bring Caleb Johnson. He's new, but like I think that's probably going to be the face of that team. But I get it. Ahmad's earned his shot. Keyshawn Johnson, obviously the best defensive player they have. I don't mind that. Southern, though, another one where I'm looking and I'm like, okay, is this the guy?
It's just who it is.
Because for me, coach, I've been very vocal and listen, Jamie already put it in the chat. Do I think Harold Blood starts the whole year? I've been very vocal. I think the two best quarterbacks on that roster come September are the two freshmen that they're bringing in. Just me, like based on fit. Like, do I? Okay, coach, I'll try to word this best I can. Am I 100% sure they're ready to be the guy day one? No, but if you're looking at the ceiling, I think they have the highest ceiling of anyone else on the roster.
I'm with you, and then I think scheduling goes into that as well. Um, you know, you got a couple buffers before you get to where it really matters. Um, do you want to go ahead and throw that into the fire and be ready when it comes, as Dean Barnes would say, SWAC time, baby? Or you're going to go with what you perceive to be more experience? Um, I'm going to stay away from that one.
Hey, that's fair. Because you're in a position. Listen, you're still a coach in the conference. I can say what I think. You gotta. I get it. But Jalen Campbell, I don't mind. That's the guy on defense. But I would say I think my guy Christian Davis potentially earned it, especially because he's been the only guy on that roster to go through all three coaching changes.
And that's
He's
a school that could have easily took 2 from the defensive side of the ball, and no one would have said anything.
No. Well, August Petrie is if Petrie's back, he's could get some consideration at wide receiver for offense. I think he had a pretty good year last year. Texas Southern, do we even have to address it? I mean, like I told you on the phone, if you gave me a blank slate and said you just need to write out all the players coming to media day, Andrew Body would have been the first name of the list. Jarvion Howard would have been second.
1A, 1B.
Yeah. It was easy. Andrew Body was coming to media day, and it wasn't even close. And I'm cool.
I have to wear the turtleneck. Just listen to the Andrew. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, back to business.
Jacob Williams, I'm cool with. There's a lot of newcomers on the defense. He's been kind of the consistent guy over there. I'm cool. UAPB, I'll be completely honest. This is no disrespect. I won't even know a name to write down for them. So I'm cool with whoever they pick because I'm not really sure what they got coming back. Like just bring bring who's there. Like that's cool.
You were there, you know who went through spring, you know, I'm with you on that one.
I had someone text me, and this ain't coming from me, guys. This came from someone who messaged me, and I thought it was hilarious. They said UAPB could pick up 2 guys on the way to media day and not tell anyone who they are, and everyone would have just went with it. I don't even need the names, bro. Just give me 2 bodies.
I wasn't the guy that texts you that, but
you weren't. It was not a coach. It was someone who listens to the show. They said they could have just picked up 2 random people, and everyone would have just had to come up with questions on the spot.
Like, okay, how's it been? How you guys doing?
Oh my God, man. I love it. But coach, looking at preseason voting, I know that let me say it like this. No disrespect to anyone who votes, but y'all are atrocious at voting, whoever votes for this conference awards, because it is all over the place. But who is your we'll do 2 separate ones. Who do you think will be the preseason offense and defensive player of the year, and who would you vote if you got to vote?
I'm biased, but hear me out on my numbers. Hear me out. I don't think with the departures from the conference, I don't think you cannot put Agent Zero as not being the conference player of the year. I don't think you can do that. Just because of what he did. And it was really a burst on the scene and continuously, did what he did. So if you don't put Jarvion in that spot, I get it, but the only other person, the quarterback at FAM, that would have been, I could have lived with that one if it wasn't Jarvion. Defensive player of the year. Hear me out. I'm going with Terrence Ellis. Terrence almost had 100 tackles playing next to Claude, who is now with the New York Jets. And now he moves into that role, and he just quietly goes about business. I say that because of the departure from Tallahassee. I think Terrence is the guy that moves up. No slag to the kid at Bama State. It'll be interesting to see how people attack him now, because the numbers he put up was, B, let's just be honest, it was stupid. I don't know how he didn't win it last year. So it's one of those deals of like what they say in the NBA, you never win it the year you're supposed to. So I would go Terrence and him, 1A, 1B, and I would be good with either one of those. Coach of the year, Coach McNair, only because everybody has put us to the bottom of the West, and we're fine with that. The only other candidate I would go for with that situation, if somehow Coach TC can manage to get over the 6-win mark, I think he bumps into consideration for that.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if they do a preseason coach of the year. I don't think they.
No, that was just me.
Okay, that was just you. Okay, pitching it for later. I like that, but for me, I'll say this because listen, I get that you have biases, and so you had to you had to kind of tailor your pitch. I'll say this: if Jarvion Howard isn't the preseason SWAC Offensive Player of the Year next week, throw everyone who voted away. Throw them all the way. They don't deserve a vote. I mean, you got the only player on offense in the SWAC to be an FCS All-American, led the conference in rushing easily, and did it with no offense. I love Aaron Allen after he got hurt. Did it with no quarterback play. And just loaded the box. Like, there were times where Jackson had, 9 players in the box during that game, and he still put up almost 100 yards on Jackson, who had one of the best rushing defenses in the country. There's no, I'm sorry, that like Musa shouldn't even be in consideration for it. Should be Jarvion Howard as a consensus with 1 vote for Musa, and it's Willie Simmons, and maybe 2, Josh at the SID, who also votes for it. That's it. Like that's how the vote should go for preseason. Now we'll see what happens during the season. I'm not going to predict postseason on July 12th. Preseason, it should not even be close. It shouldn't. There's not even a thought in my mind. If I'll be in Birmingham, I'm coming live. If Jarvion's not on here, I'm dropping you the link, and everyone's getting roasted for that vote. I'm gonna find out who voted.
Let's do a live,
and we're just going live. But defense, I'll be honest. Okay, in my opinion, it should be almost consensus for Bubba. Another FCS All-American, and he was an FCS All-American for multiple publications. And he almost won SWAC Defensive Player of the Year last year. He competed with a great player in Aubrey Miller. It is what it is. I'm not going to debate that, but he's going to win it, in my opinion. But I will say the number two that I'll put up there is Sundiata Anderson. He's going to get some consideration because in my opinion, I'm okay. I'm going to be 100% honest, and this is no disrespect to anybody. He was already the best defensive lineman in the SWAC before Kamari Stephens left. I think he was a better player than Kamari. No offense, no offense, but he is more impactful, and I think he also projects better to the next level too as a prospect compared to Kamari.
I get that.
So that would be my one kind of B. I think Terrence easily going to be first team all SWAC. I think that should be consensus. I think the linebackers are going to be some combination. I don't know how the SWAC does it, but I do 4 linebackers on all my preseason teams just because of the development of an edge rusher. You have to have 4 linebackers on your all conference, all whatever thing. But for me, I think it's going to be Isaiah Major, Bubba, Terrence Ellis, and then you're probably going to slide Lewis Matthews in to that 4th linebacker spot.
I would give him that edge.
Yeah, so that's but Mr. Rick, I said this is preseason. Andrew was hurt at times last year. I don't think you can give it to Andrew over Jarvion if you're basing it for preseason off of what happened last year. I think it's got to go to Jarvion preseason. We'll see what happens this year, though. But I do agree with some of the comments. I know Zoe's in there. The thing that worries me is the SWAC is infatuated with quarterbacks. And I have a weird feeling that they are going to just hand it to Musa because of the position he plays.
And that's why I said I can live with the
I think we lost my guy, Coach Fred. There we go. We got you back.
Okay. I could go with that just because of what you said. But I want to go. I want to fast forward to something else. So, well, I want to rewind, and we'll move to the next subject. I know we're getting a little long, but popularity. how much do you feel like that weighed into the Defensive Player of the Year award last year? Because if you go by numbers, it wasn't even a conversation.
Okay, so I think it depends on. Okay, so for me, I don't put everything into stats necessarily. I don't know. I don't. Okay, so one, I don't know who all the voters were, and
Right?
two, I don't know what their personal resume, what they were looking for. Because for me, when I put when I put together all the American all conference lists, I don't necessarily go by just the stats. I also want to go by overall impact.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
when you look at Aubrey, here's the argument for Aubrey for me is if you go strictly stats, no eye test, nothing, you just go look at the stats, who was the best statistical player, it's Bubba, and give it to him. That's cool if that's what you do. But for me, if you look at the leadership, the off the field intangibles, the overall impact he had on the defense, and the fact that he played on the best defense. And if you take him away, I don't know if that Jackson defense is the same without him. I think those are the arguments you have to make with Aubrey, is that it's more than just the stats. And also, too, there's one game, coach, that really sold me on him as just a prospect and why I think he'll make the Dolphins roster. That Campbell game. If Aubrey Miller is not wearing 45 blue in the vet, that game goes a completely different way.
You think so?
Oh yeah. Listen, and the Jackson State fans can put it in the chat and correct me if I'm tripping. That first drive, Campbell, drove it straight down their throat to the other side of the field. And in that fourth down, Aubrey was the one that made that stop. That game could have been 17-0 in the first quarter without Aubrey Miller. And you go back and watch, he was taking on left tackles. He was taking on pulling guards. And that Campbell offensive line is the same one 2 weeks earlier that I was in attendance, coach. I was standing on the sideline as they bullied North Carolina Central. I'm talking about that North Carolina Central team did not want anymore after the second quarter. They were going to the sidelines like, do we have to really go back out there? Because they put up 360 yards rushing on North Carolina Central and did it with ease. And their center had a broken hand. And Aubrey Miller single-handedly won Jackson that game. Coach, me and you will have to do a film breakdown on that game because I'm telling you, if they don't have Aubrey Miller, Jackson, that game was not going to go the same.
So let me ask you this with what you said. So does the MVP have to be on a winning team?
What's the position? Because, okay, so I feel like quarterbacks get a big boost for being on a winning team in terms of voting. Like, okay, so like for my All-American list, you look at all the QBs on the list, they're all great statistically, but there's one that took a team to the next level, and then there's two national champions. Like, that has to matter for a quarterback. But I would say yes, to a point. I think there's a level. Like, you can't be on a 2-9 team and win MVP. I'm sorry, you can't. Like, I think if your team's above 500, we can have a conversation. But if your team won one game, man, you could be first team all conference. But for you to win MVP on a losing team, you have to put up Lindsey Scott type numbers. And if you're putting up numbers like that, your team's probably not one loss.
I'm going to give you a little pushback and we can move on. My man, Tim, I always butcher his last name, threw for all those yards. Clearly to me, if you take him out of that, they aren't what they are. I don't care if they win 1, they win 5. If you take him out of that, they aren't where they are. If you take Aubrey Miller out of that defense and put the number 2 linebacker, I think they still have enough up front to make it happen. I think I probably could have held up at linebacker for a little while. You know what I mean? I get you can't go over, but most valuable And that's the problem that I have with like the NBA. It's most valuable. Who is the most valuable to their team? You take him off, what happens with that team? And Tim DeMorat, you
Oh
take him,
yeah.
I don't think they're nowhere near as good. Um, there's going to be some questions this year with certain people going from certain teams. How good will they be? How true of an MVP were those guys? Um,
Mm.
and that's the only pushback I give you on that. I admit it. I don't think anybody that goes 0-10 should be in the MVP race
Yeah.
because they went 0-10. But if you go by numbers and you're saying that kid accounted for over half of what they did, he's got to be in consideration.
I'm with you. Okay, like he could be in consideration. It's just like for me in my perspective, because I vote on the Walter Payton, I vote on the Butt Buchanan, all that. When you're deciphering through really good players, obviously, like they're probably all going to have a stat, and I usually set like a baseline. Like if you're not above this level statistically, you probably can't be considered. Like
So
you have
alignment
to
would never win that for you.
say that again.
Alignment would never win that for you. Tony Baselli,
Mm.
Trent Williams, they would never have an opportunity at that deal.
No, because the issue with offensive line, because listen, I'm an old lineman, so I'm always going to vouch for my guys. The problem is offensive line success is such a unit based award that you can't give it to one guy. Like Trent Williams is amazing on his own, but if you put him on an offensive line with a bunch of other scrubs, they're giving up 50 sacks a year.
Can a receiver win it?
Yeah, I think so. Um, I'm trying to think because like Cooper Cup, he was a unanimous Walter Payton Award selection.
And I did some research on him, and people won't understand. A lot of his stuff happened 15 yards and under.
Mm-hmm.
He did the rest. So
Yeah.
I get his situation. Quarterback throw him a 15-yard stop route hook, and he goes 85, and it looks like the quarterback threw an 85-yard touchdown, but it was really him. Um,
Yeah. He was a special though. Like it's tough to like say him, but I'm trying to think just currently.
we can,
It's hard.
uh,
It's hard to go ahead.
I said we can push on. It could be another show, but I just want to. John
Mm.
Stockton wins uh, the year that Kobe should have won it, and they gave it to
Steve Nash.
Steve Nash. Um, you take Kobe off the Lakers that year, they're not the Lakers. You take Nash off the Suns, they're still okay.
Yeah.
Uh, but the numbers were so, you know what I mean. So at what point don't the numbers matter?
Um. Okay, so for me, I'll just give you my perspective because I can't talk to every vote. That's what I always say on my channel because people always ask me, why is this team ranked here? Why is this player getting hyped? Like, I can't speak for other voters, but for me, I look at not only stats, I look at the analytics, PFF scores, just the high level analytics in terms of like stuff that you can't just get from the film. I look at film, I look at NFL projection, I look at impact overall. Because like we talked about it. Remember when we talked about the national championship, Caleb Sanders and those
Yep,
D tackles for South Dakota State?
yep.
Not great statistically. That there were multiple defensive tackles in the SWAC that probably had more statistics than them, but could you argue that no one was arguing that those guys shouldn't be first team All Americans? And then when we and you broke down the national championship film, we saw the impact.
Oh, they cleaned it up. They
And
they
so,
double teams. They let other guys run free. They made plays when they had a chance to make plays, and that and to hear you say PFF, that's a huge tool that I wish that everybody kind of had access to because it really makes the game simple when you're able to look at that.
so I think it's just everyone weighs stuff differently. And there's some people who are lazy. Let's just be honest. There are voters out there, whether it's top 25, all conference, all American, that are just lazy and they go with the flow. They are afraid to take a chance on a guy
Really pick.
who.
They go with the trendy pick.
Exactly. And also I think you see this with some people in the media. I'm not going to name names and we're all good. But they would rather make the trendy pick so they don't have to come on a show. They don't have to write an article and defend why they picked a player rather than doing a research, having a real opinion, really understanding the game and being able to defend it. Like I can talk all day about the guy. Like I picked because everyone does either one or two teams for All the Americans preseason. We did three, and I could talk about all 98 players on there and why I thought they deserved to be there. But there's a lot of people who probably couldn't tell you who made their 32 man All-American team. And so that's the difference. And also, if you really don't study the game, people struggle evaluating dependent positions. Whether it's wide receiver, whether it's offensive line, edge, people are okay at. Defensive tackle, people are atrocious at. Linebacker, especially off ball, people are atrocious at. And anything defensive back wise, most people have no idea what they're talking about evaluating defensive backs.
Because if you're not the guy from the LA Rams as a defensive tackle, they don't understand. They don't. I mean, if you are constantly commanding a double team as a D tackle, you're doing your job.
Yeah.
As a receiver, if they've got to count two people for you, you're doing your job. And I think a lot of times, like you just said, I think a lot of times the people that have that pen, like they say with the Heisman voters, West Coast guys have the hardest time because the East Coast voters are in bed by the time they play. You know, you've got to go back and you've got to look at that film. You got to check it out. In one show you were on, they were talking about that a receiver for us had a less than productive day versus another team. But when you go back and you look at it, you know, the kid had over 100 yards. Two of those catches should have been touchdowns, ball underthrown, but he still makes the play. 4 catches. As a receiver, in those situations, that's a good day. That's a very productive day. If you're not really into the game, you would say, he didn't score. He didn't do much. He had 4 catches for over 100 yards. That's not easy. But if you're not really a student of the game, if you don't really go back and look at it, it's tough to say that. So when you're talking, and that's why I asked you the question, I just want to get your opinion. When you're talking about MVPs, if my left tackle never gives up a sack, I can always go get 2 yards behind him. How do you factor that in there? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And like you said, those inside guys on the D-line, it's tough to evaluate them unless you go back and look at it and really evaluate it like we did the national championship game, that kind of thing. And how many guys actually do that?
Not many. I mean, let's just be honest. And I think you see it today on Twitter where a former NFL defensive back is trying to drag one of the best up-and-coming corners in the NFL because he doesn't have a lot of interceptions.
They're not throwing at me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm locking myself up. You know?
It's just, when I saw that today, I was shocked. I was like, you are a former NFL player and you're saying that Ahmad Gardner is not a good cornerback?
Sauce is one of the best college corners to ever freaking play the game.
Ever.
Go look at the numbers.
0 touchdowns in 3 years. That's ignorant.
Go look at the numbers. You know, the current coach at Colorado, nobody fooled with him because they knew that, okay, he goes that side of the field, we're working this side of the field. That's no knock at him. That's a, tip the hat. Hey, have a nice Sunday. But we're not allowing you to play in the game. That kind of thing. Yeah. And I just, the common fan, I don't think they really break it down to that point. You know what I mean? But, hey, this is Coach's Corner, man. We're going to do all that.
You see, and that's why, like, I hate the argument, too, where it's like, people who think that if unless you've played in the NFL, you really don't know football. When you got former NFL cornerback saying Darrelle Revis was overrated, it was like, bro, we got to throw your opinion in the trash.
There was a reason it's called Revis Island. You know what I mean? There's a reason. And I get into the argument all the time. Uh, Everybody, Jerry Rice is the GOAT. Yeah, I can do that. But I can also present an argument for Randy Moss. You know what I mean? Randy Moss, you got Moss. Nobody's saying you got Rice, but Rice did his thing, no doubt about it. But I think it goes Rice, it goes Moss. Moss changed the game. Jerry did his thing. I don't know how you put anybody above Moss or Rice when you're talking receivers, at that level, if you really know the game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so one of my first introductions in the space, like when I first kind of came on the scene, like I've always kind of watched FCS football, and I like, listen, the Valley fans, listen, I'm back on their good side. My guy, Coach Anderson, got me back in the good graces, but man, they were pissed at me because I said Cooper Kupp belongs in the same conversation as Jerry Rice in terms of collegiate careers.
Check the numbers.
They are on the same level, and there's an argument Cooper was a better college wide receiver than him. And they were pissed. I mean, Valley, I think I blocked from Itabena, some parts of Itabena, because I said that.
And Randy, too. People don't realize at one point Marshall was not, FBS. They were, 1AA.
Mm-hmm.
Those numbers were stupid, but I guess I don't understand when people have those arguments and they don't really go back and say and just break down the numbers. Like, this is what it is. Not me. As Floyd Mayweather said, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. This is what was recorded.
Yeah.
Barry did 1,001. Cooper did 1,000. They're right there. How you want to slice it?
And I get it, because there's like nostalgia effect too? Because like, how it is. Like I talk to, like, when you talk to your dad, grandfather, it's like people like no one can be better than Lawrence Taylor or whoever like they watch coming up. Like, but it's like, dude, Aaron Donald is in the conversation for the greatest defensive lineman of all time, whether you like it or not.
And everybody always say the game has changed, this, that, and the other. I'll give you one more and we can move on to what we got to do. Itabena is tidy, so
he said it was from all parts. There's not a section you can be banned from.
So just to give a heads up, and we're working on this deal. Common man, shameless plug. At once upon a time, Alcorn State was DBU. They had a run of where everyone in the secondary got drafted into the NFL. Those guys played against Jerry Rice. I hope, he'll tell you right now that he needs to be in that same conversation because he held Jerry to whatever the numbers were. But people won't do that because they're saying, Jerry was this, Jerry was that. That was just a game. No, that's still part of his resume. Ike Hilliard held him. Ike Holt held him to whatever. Like you said, the nostalgia part, the original DBU, Alcorn State, during that same satellite Titan, the Rice, which was a great era. All of those things were still the same. But like you said, when you're talking numbers, how you want to slice it, that kind of thing. But we can move on. That's touchy. I don't want to be blocked from Itabena like you are.
Nah, man, I'm welcome back now. My guy, Coach Anderson, gonna let me back in. But quickly, expectations for new HBCU head coaches, man. We got 6 coaches that are coming in this year, first season at their respective universities. Some of them first-time head coaches, like my guy Vincent Brown over at North Carolina A&T. When you look at what he's stepping into, they lost a lot of transfers. Tootin, Jacob Roberts, they graduated both defensive ends this past season. Of course, they got Karan Prunty coming back, FCS All-American. When you look at his expectations for you, where do you set first year expectations for Vincent Brown going into a new conference in the CAA?
It's going to be tough, just because of the losses that he's coming into. How much patience are they going to have with him? And that's not an easy conference to go into for a first year head coach. And the expectations are out the roof already. How how much are they going to be willing to, tailor that for him? Um, at best, if he can pull it to a 500 type situation, um, I think that would be good. Uh, a game here or there could get into that 6, 7, and you feel what I'm saying. It could get into that 6 or 7, but it could also very well go to 3-win, 4-win type situation going into that new conference. Not knowing how well those, the replacements that they brought in is gonna, be for him. First year, new systems on both sides of the ball. This is a really tough job, um, just because of the expectations that follow Coach Washington.
Yeah, that's the big thing is if you let this fall to 2, 3 wins, worst case, that firing looks
Bad.
questionable. Because I get why they made the change because you go get a guy in Vincent Brown who has won a national championship on a CAA team at Richmond under Mike London. He led a top defense in the country in William and Mary, multiple All-Americans, freshman All-Americans. Like he's done it in the CAA. No one's more familiar with the CAA than Vincent Brown. Plus, HBCU alum, coached at Howard, led them to that big upset over UNLV. Like he's tied into what needs to go on. But it just seems like all the odds are stacked against them. You go into the CAA with a team that could have beat you last year in Campbell. It was a really tight game on homecoming. They had to overcome a big second half deficit. Your cross state rival is at the peak of that program right now. Yeah, you got to, and then of course your out of conference game, UAB on the road, probably not going to protective and pulling off that upset with how UAB's looking, especially under their new head coach and that revamp. Yeah, so you're looking at that. You got UAB first game of the season on the road, Central coming to you. The crucial game here to me that's really going to set my expectations is at Elon week 3. You have to win that game.
You got to. And to take Coach Washington out of it, you're following you're following a pretty steep situation,
Yeah.
And I know we got to keep pushing, but another show, I think the removal of Coach Washington may have been a year too early, just because of his track record. You just made the move into that situation, and then you made another move. I think his track record gave him at least credibility for one more, which puts Coach Brown into a difficult situation because it happened when it happened, and now you're talking about recruiting, graduation. Now you got to try to match up, and like you said, that swing game could be tough because Elon is not bottom of the barrel.
No. Yeah, and it's on the road. So you're sitting at 0-3 if you lose that game. Then you got to go on the road to Norfolk. You probably should win that game. I'm assuming that's 1-3. And then you got the death stretch of Villanova at Delaware and then Richmond. That can go from 1-3 to 1-6 real fast. So that's why that Elon game is so important because you got to get a win. And in my opinion, I know it's a lot to ask because Richmond, Delaware, Villanova, we know what those programs have been historically and really recently. You got to win one of those somewhere.
You got to. You got to win one of those just to get some credibility within your program.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about with the people that hired you. I'm not talking about with the alums. I'm talking about with the kids that come and get in on a foot and a knee at the end of practice that look up to you every day. You've got to get that. Everybody can say they brought in Blue, but like I know, being a former player, we've all brought in until week 6 and we look up and we're like, man, we 0-6. This dude don't know what he's talking about. That kind of thing. You've got to get one of those early, and it's got to be a convincing deal to get buy-in, real buy-in from the kids on your team.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. But moving to my guy Lee Hull, over at Delaware State, former Morgan head coach, has been over at Howard as the OC. I
Extremely
think,
tough.
yeah, this is going to be tough. But listen, I'll say this. I think this could be the most underrated hire of the offseason. One of them, because I think Lee Hall has proved that he can win at Morgan. He took Morgan to the playoffs. Like, I just want to put it in perspective for people. Won a Co-MEAC championship. I I think if you give him a year or two, he can get this thing turned around. And I think for him, the expectation is, no one expects him to win the MEAC, but if you can get to that like third place, right behind Central, and whether it's Morgan or South Carolina State, whoever you want to put in two, if you can get to that tied for third position, somewhere around 3 to 4, I think that's good for year one, and then catch somebody. If they can pull off a big upset against one of those top, perceived top teams, you can't lose to Bowie week one, obviously. Like, you gotta win your D2 games, but you get South Carolina State at home and you get Howard at home.
You got to make it interesting.
That would be the game, and like, you got to win the game. You got to beat Norfolk. Like that, to me, that's the bare minimum.
And shout out to my guy, Donald Driver, working with them. They're moving in the right direction, but I don't know if. Well, I go back to what you said. The expectations are probably at an all-time system. No disrespect, probably at an all-time system. Low.
Yeah.
But if, like you said, if you can catch one of those games, win the games you're supposed to win, and make it interesting into going into week 7, I think you have an opportunity to get some real juice going. I don't think the expectations for him, I'm sure it's high, but for around the program, I'm sure it's like, it is what it is. It gets cold pretty quick up here, that kind of thing. But if it gets cold and he's still putting people in the stands because it's interesting, I think it could be one of those deals that kind of catches fire, and he can catch some people and find himself in the hunt the last couple of weeks of the season.
I put him kind of in the same boat as that Morgan's coach last year was, where we don't expect you to go win the MEAC this year. We get what rebuild this is, but we want to see some promise.
Something.
Yeah, like, set us up for next year, because that's what Damon did for Morgan. That South Carolina State win was huge. 41 to 14 or something. Like, beating Buddy Pugh like that.
And knocked him in the national championship game, basically.
Yeah, that was a huge game. So I think that's kind of the standard for Lee Hull, is show us something to get excited about in 2024, because that's when the real expectations start. We understand where this program is, what it's going to take. Just give us something. So I think that's where I am with them. But shifting to all the SWAC schools, we got Alonzo Hampton over at UAPB. And Coach, I'll be honest, looking at this schedule, I don't see a lot of wins.
I'm not going to give them any bulletin boards.
Yeah, no.
But I don't think people really understand how late hires really sets a program back for the upcoming season. Again, I'm sure he'll have them competitive. Again, as coaches, our expectations are always high for us, but campus wide, it can't be too high. Win the games you're supposed to win. And
there's not a lot on the schedule. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's not a lot of games.
Win your homecoming, win your D2 games, like you said earlier, and show promise, show movement. This is a program 2 years ago that was in the SWAC championship. I don't want to put an asterisk by it, but you know what? I'll put an asterisk by it. We didn't play in it. COVID season. You're in the championship game, and then you come back that following year, and it's a major drop-off. You're not too far removed from that. So people still want to see glimpses and hopes of that type thing, So it'll be interesting to see how Coach Hampton gets them ready. It'll be interesting to see him at Media Day. So I can't wait to see that as well.
I'm excited to talk to him. And my guy D in the chat they did schedule y'all for homecoming.
I would just tell D a couple years ago, not that long ago, we were everybody's homecoming, and we won everybody's homecoming. So we like that. We like that. And as they say, we ain't ducking, we ain't
No,
hiding, running. Hey,
no,
parking lot full, baby. We ready to come.
I love it, and I think maybe it's just me. Is I got to ask some like other FCS fans, like, do like I think that's another thing the SWAC keeps track of more so than other. Like, I've never heard another fan base. Like, I don't even know. Like, I'll be honest, you can quiz me. I have no idea who North Dakota State or any of them play for homecoming. None. But I know who ever about damn near every HBCU plays for homecoming. Like, I have no idea who Southeastern Louisiana. I just Southeastern Louisiana even have a homecoming game. I don't know. That's the other big thing.
That's part of the tradition, baby. Between that and the classic, like I told you, growing up in Florida, I didn't know much about the SWAC. Even though I had an uncle that went to Jackson State, it was family Bethune because of homecoming and the Florida Classic. And back in the day, Florida Classic was in Tampa. They need to move it back to Tampa, but that's a whole nother story. But it's always been serious business for those two games, homecoming and that classic, man.
Man, I like my guy Zoe's funny. Because he's a Jackson guy, so I get it, the rivalry is there. He calls Alcorn Port Gibson State. He-
Hey, so I'm gonna just ask this, so it wasn't too long ago. I just need to make sure y'all understand. No slight to Coach Hendricks or Coach Hughes, but yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
that's a fact, Mr. Campbell. I have no idea who Auburn plays for homecoming, and I never did, even when I was a student. No idea. But guess what? I knew when the Iron Bowl and when the Georgia game was. Absolutely. And guess what? I knew when the Orange Out was. I always loved the Orange Out, but did not know when homecoming was. But man, we'll keep it pushing, man, before we get into the homecoming debate. But
I love
Raymond Woody, talk about a late hire, surrounded by a lot of question marks. And I I'm looking at the schedule again. There's some tough games, man, because they got at Memphis, at Miami, at Jackson, at Montgomery. Then they play Southern in a neutral site, and then they got, of course, FAMU in the Florida Classic. There's a lot of games that, man, they're going to be tough, and it's just with everything that happened. I'll be honest, Coach. I don't have any expectations for Raymond Woody. Just get us through the season.
bro, and that's got to be the expectation from campus. I know, as you know, the fan base is probably going to still have expectations, but you got to understand, man, when he came in, you got to understand what he came in under. Um, Anything in the W column this year has got to be a plus. Um, if you're not losing games, and again, no knock to Coach Woody. Coach Woody sent me some great players, man, when he was a high school coach. When I was coaching out in the JC, he sent me great players. We have a good relationship. I know coaches on his staff. If they're losing games 28-14, that's a win to me.
Yeah.
Considering what he came in under, when he came in, the recruiting process was pretty much done. Not to mention everybody that had left through the portal before he got there. Um, I think anything that looks like a positive has got to be taken as a positive for 2023 season, and then the expectations need to go back up for the 24 season. But for this season, if Coach could get to 3 freaking wins, he might be in consideration for SWAC Coach of the Year.
I'm with you. If 3 wins is an A+, 4 wins build a statue.
Oh,
Because I mean,
he gets to
like
500.
yeah, and let's just be honest. You could be 1-10 because out of the 11 games this year, 1-10. If they beat FAMU,
Give him an extension.
yeah, like that would just be it. And I know Zoe in the chat already said FAMU is going to be one of those wins. He's predicted it the whole off season. But really, yeah, I don't know about that. But I mean, looking at their conference schedule, I mean, like I said, they got at Jackson, at Bama State, Texas Southern, at Grambling in the hole, Valley, A&M, Florida A&M. If you can win 2 to 3 conference games, that's a huge season.
Put the statue up, like you said. Put the statue up, and please cast votes for Coach Woody, Coach of the Year in the SWAC. You got to do it. You
Yeah,
got.
I'm with you. But shifting over to my guy, listen, uh, Kendrick Wade, this is probably one of the coaches that I'm probably most looking forward to talking at media day because he doesn't do a lot of media. He's still a newer coach, but I'm really really interested in seeing what he's got to say. But Mississippi Valley State football, man, listen, the bar recently, especially after last year when Dancy walked out the door, was set extremely low before the staff came in. But I think you got to give them credit, man. They've recruited at a way better level than they've probably have in a long time.
They hit it. I mean, he came in and he hit it. The new AD has come in as well. I got a chance to interview him as well. And he's kind of, hey, this is what it's got to be. But we got to start here. I'm interested to see how he starts out. Because if he starts out and it's below 500, where does it go?
Yeah.
He starts out and you look up, like you say, and now we're at 3-2. We're at 3-1. Does it catch fire? Coach Dancy, I really feel like he was that close. He left. A lot of kids left, but a lot of kids came in. I think the first 4 games is going to really swing where this thing goes for him.
Luckily, they have Central State and Delta State the first 2 weeks. Now, I know they lost to Delta State last year. I get it. I understand. But if you can start 2-0, even with 2 D, and I don't hold anyone else in the SWAC to the standard. Listen, if you're a FAMU fan, an Alcorn fan, let one of y'all lose to a D2 and you're getting clowned on the show. But if Valley slips up, we're gonna give them some grace. That's just the way it's gonna work on this show. But don't everyone out there just think y'all can all lose to D2s at once because it's just for Valley. It's the only one that gets a pass.
Come on,
But
man, I'm on the show.
Yeah, no, you don't get a pass, coach. The coach, you would not want to be on the coach's corner if y'all slip up to a D2. I'll just be honest. We'll have to have a real heart to heart on this one. But
we
after
don't have
those
on
2,
the schedule.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, that a little shot, but I like it. But okay, let's just say this. I know Delta State's loaded. I see the chat. If they can start 2-0, that would be huge because the next 2 games is North Carolina Central and FAMU.
That's huge. I mean, they pop in their collar if they start out, 2-0. And now you've got them drinking that juice. And it's a tough place to play down there, man. The stadium, it's on you, the locker room,
the grass.
Kids to understand that, hey, man, we're here to play a football game. Never mind the small locker room. Never mind the grass up to your shins. We've got to play. And you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds that you've got to get over that hurdle. Never mind that we had to ride in here hour and a half to come play this game. You've got to get them over that hurdle. Now you're facing a team that's 2-0, that's feeling themselves at home. I mean, that could be something.
I'll say this, this could be my bold prediction. Not really bold. I'll just say this. I won't be surprised. The home games this year for them in Itabena, FAMU, Jackson, and Alabama State all come to Valley. I will not be surprised if they catch one of those.
They're gonna steal one.
I got a feeling it's going to be the one in November. I'll leave that one just out there. I think it's going to be the team in November who's going to come late, which are the Hornets, because I got the most questions about them. But I think someone's going to get called just because of, like you said, that home field advantage, man. Because if I'm not mistaken, PV was caught last year. Alabama A&M got caught last year. And let's not forget, Jackson fans in my chat have said this repeatedly. They were terrified 2 years ago when they played Valley because I don't know what it is. There's like a spell in that stadium where it don't matter how good of a team you are, You come to Itabena. That's what worries me about Delta State, to be honest with you, Coach, is they got to go to Delta State to play them. They don't come to Itabena. They travel to Delta State.
That's tough, man. And I'll tell you from experience, it's tough to get your guys up for that. Even though it's a rival for us, it's tough to get them up for that game there because you go out and you have all these different elements that in their mind is working against us, if that makes sense. Like you said, grass, from the locker room, from the drive-in. Guys, I don't care if we had to get dressed on the bus, we got to go. And it's tough to get those guys to that mindset, especially already in their mind, like, cuz this is going to be easy. No, it's not going to be easy. We got to play. And we almost got caught last year because we thought we were just going to roll our helmet in and win the game. And we had to fight to the end of the game to come up and win it. But, they always catch somebody. And this year won't be any different. They'll catch somebody there, definitely.
I'll say this. My hope for Wade, and I think he's going to be successful. He put together a great staff. They've been recruiting. It's all amazing. We have to get Valley to a level because you're thinking about the history behind this program and all the greats that came. The fact that they had to resort to traveling to a D2, that there's a D2 program out there who thought that they deserved to host Valley is outrageous to me. Like, you would never catch Jackson or Alcorn or FAM or any other big FCS team traveling to a D2 school. That's outrageous.
We're not going to do that. But I get it. It is what it is. And as coaches, you try to fill it with things that you think you can, I can remember being a high school coach and we scheduled somebody for a high school basketball coach, and we scheduled somebody for a Christmas tournament, Newport Richie Christian, thinking we were going to, open up the tournament, get to the semifinal round or whatever, that first game, not realizing Newport Richie Christian recruited. And they commenced to kicking our ass, you know what I'm saying? So, you fluff your schedule thinking that, not realizing when you get to Delta State, like, wait a minute, they got prospects over there. And, you lock yourself in for 2 years and then you're in a dogfight for 2 years with a Division II school. When is it really worth it? That kind of thing. But I get what you're saying. But from the coach's standpoint, we got to find wins somehow before we get to the conference.
Yeah, and I get it because someone in the chat posted apparently Delta State holds a very strong record against Valley. So I understand. And I don't and listen, I get it because the one good thing I will say, it probably sucked for the team last year, but I think the fact that Delta State beat Valley last year, even though it's a new staff, new players, there's a few guys that remember what that felt like. Coach Wade and them, yeah, they're not going to tiptoe into that Delta State game, regardless if they win or lose. I'm not making up whatever. They aren't sleeping on Delta State, and that's the thing that's probably going to separate them from some other SWAC teams playing D2 schools, is that loss is real fresh in their mind, and they know what it's like to lose to a D2 school. And that's why for me, I get how talented Delta State is, but Coach Wade coached there. There's going to be no surprises. They've played them for years now. I really do. I have faith that Valley can go beat Delta State regardless of how talented they are this year.
But Delta State also has that on their shoulder as well.
Yep.
You were with us. Now you're on the other side. That's your Super Bowl. Those kids are going to play extra hard just because he's on that other sideline.
Yeah, I'm with you. And listen, I'm excited to see that game. I know last year, like, it's bad, Coach. And listen, we and you got to talk to Dancy, and I love what he's doing. I love him and everything he's doing. But let's just be honest. Before that game, I came on this channel and I said Delta State will win that game by double digits. That's how little faith I had in Valley. So the fact that I even think that they improved enough this offseason, I got enough faith in Wade to at least compete. At least that's a step in the right direction. I never thought I'd be saying this on the show, that I'm like, they might have a chance against a D2 school. I'm just hoping we can get to the point where it's Valley by however many against these D2 schools.
All right. And with that being said, man, I need you to text me some lottery numbers.
I got you.
Yeah, we'll go from there. And that's
I gotta pull up my like someone asked me on the last show. I gotta pull it up because there was someone on Twitter, and I don't remember who it is. If you're in the chat and you know that I'm talking about you, please tell me it was you. There was someone who would take my my predictions that I would make on the website where I would predict the score and all that kind of stuff. And they literally were taking my picks and running like actual bets, earning money based off what I was picking. And I was like, that is crazy because now I feel like I have way too much pressure because
To
I
be
feel like, yeah, like now you're riding on what I'm predicting. I'm trying to pull up what my like final record was because it was I want to say last year someone asked me what the percentage was and I don't remember. Let's see.
need
I
to hit
got my
dog,
hang on.
FanDuel.
Let's
I think we need to hit them up, man.
So, okay, going into semifinal weekend, because I can't find the other one, going into the semifinals, I was 113 and 33 last year in FCS predictions, which I think that's pretty good. That's pretty solid.
You think?
So, bro, I need to know because someone tagged me on Twitter like every Saturday and was like, I put my picks in. And I was like, do not be picking like because I would feel so because I started out horrible. Like I went 113 to 33, and I probably was like 2-6 going into week two. Because week 0 and week 1, you don't
Huh.
have any idea what people are doing. And I mean, week 0 was my worst week of the season. But then there was like a stretch from like week 4 to like week 7 where I was like undefeated. It was just it was just insane. But
Fan dog, get at us, man.
that's right. Hey, listen, well, we already got a sponsorship, man. DraftKings it should be sponsoring the Coach's Corner this upcoming year, so we'll have to give you all the picks there. But the final one, Coach, I know we've been on here for an hour and a half. I think we were trying to aim for an hour, man. This was a good one. It's been too long. We had a lot to talk about, but our guy over Jackson State head coach TC Taylor, me and you got to talk to him at the pro day, man. He's excited, coaching at his alma mater, and I know everyone is excited about this, and the expectations are all over the place. You, of course, got the people who aren't very big Jackson State fans predicting some outrageous stuff like 3 wins, which that's a little extreme. And then there's also, the ones that are saying 13-0, and that's on the other extreme. But for you, what's the expectations for TC Taylor year one?
I'm not going to put a win-loss total, but I will say that the expectation can go either way by week 2. The house could be the yard manicured, lovely, fertilized, nice and green, or it could be a complete fire uh, at the end of week 2. Like you said, we had a chance to talk to Coach Taylor. Like I said, and I had a chance to interview him as well. I'm pulling for him. It's going to be interesting to see week 0, how he's able to, and I know he's going to have nerves, but how his team responds to all the negativity because they've been facing it. Now, true enough, their fans have brought some of that on themselves, but they're going to face it, and it's going to be a test to them and him how they handle that week 0 versus Coach Pugh.
That game's so interesting because, listen, I think she didn't send the direct shot at me, but the new AD at South Carolina State hopped in HBCU nightly, which I'm going to hop over after we get done with this. But she had heard the hot seat talk about Coach Pugh, and that was for me. I was the one that kind of brought that up after last season, and she said he gets to leave when he wants to. I'm not saying they're going to fire him, but if this season doesn't go well, there might be an off the field role that's offered under the table to Coach Pugh, and they might have to go see what's going on over at Benedict for my guy Chinnis Berry and see if he wants to head over to coach the Bulldogs. That's just my opinion. But listen, nothing's confirmed. That game's important to Buddy Pugh because if Buddy Pugh loses that game, the season starts off real questionable with some of the FBS games they got.
That season is very important to both programs. And probably more so to Coach Pugh than TC. No, I think it's about 50-50 because and just ride with me. Two scenarios. If Coach Pugh and his kids go out there and they win that thing convincingly, all the pressure is now on Coach Taylor. I'm talking about all the pressure with fam coming up. And some of it's not going to be warranted, but it's going to be super, super pressure. It's going to be cut your phone off. Do not read any newspapers. Do not get on Twitter, IG, none of that. But the flip side of that, if Coach Taylor and those guys come out and they completely dominate, now that whole scenario switches to Coach Pugh, his staff, his kids. Is the magic gone? Did they lose too much by way of players? This game is going to be one that I'm going to watch. As T.O. would say, I'm going to get my popcorn ready because there's so much up in the air from both sides, man. And I think the question marks on the Jackson side are a lot higher than the question marks on the Carolina side. And that's just for me.
You see, I'm kind of with you on that. I would put more pressure on Buddy week 0, just because. Okay, so hear me out. So let's just say this: if Jackson loses week 0, but they bounce back and beat FAMU the week after, that game's gonna be forgotten. No one, it's already been proven. Coach, I'm not calling him out. I love my guy Connell. This is the same coach that said we get paid to win SWAC games in this conference. You already know the outlook is if Jackson, let's say, let's just count the Texas State game out. If they finish the season 9-2, go undefeated in the SWAC, and their only losses are to Texas State and South Carolina State, the Jackson State fan base is not going to care.
I'm gonna push back because it's gonna be 8-3.
No, I'm just giving you a scenario because that's why I feel like the pressure's on Pugh.
I'm with you. Yeah. Because I think that fan base is louder. That's why I say the expectations or the question marks are higher for that fan base because they're a lot louder than the Carolina fan base. Now, I don't think Taylor really, as coaches, we don't pay attention to it, but we hear it. I mean, I'm going to give you the real. We hear it. And I think if he's 0-2, oh my.
Yeah, that flips. That's a whole different conversation. Because let me find the comment because KJ put it in and she took the words right out of my mouth because this is where I was going to go with this tonight. And now I got to find her comment because I don't know what happened. Okay. She said, in her opinion, TC cannot lose to FAMU, Southern, and Alcorn. Even if they finish 8-3, that seat is hot because those are 3 games you have to win just in terms to, how it is, Coach. Let's just be honest. We can make a FBS comparison. If you're the coach at Michigan, Ohio State, Auburn, Alabama, or Clemson, South Carolina, someone like that, you have to beat the rival. Bill Curry got fired from Alabama strictly because he consistently lost to Auburn. They were ready to fire Harbaugh for going 11-1 every year because the one game he was losing was Ohio State.
She's on the
You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying is I'm with her is that I think there are key games on the schedule where I don't know if for me, I don't know if there's a win total that TC's got to reach. This is still a first-time head coach, new staff, new players, all this kind of stuff. I get it. I'm not going to put a win total on him, but there are games that the fan base is going to hang their hat on. And if at the end of the season, okay, I'm not predicting this. If Jackson finishes 6-5, but 3 of those 6 wins are FAMU at Southern and Alcorn, you feel a lot better about that 6 wins.
Yeah. I'll go with you. I'll go with you and KJ on that.
So I just think it depends on who the losses and wins are against. I think that's for every school. Okay, most schools, because there's some schools who really don't have rivalries like that and don't have the history and tradition and all that. But there are certain schools where let's just be honest, that Southern Jackson game is not a conference game. But that game probably means more to some Jackson and Southern fans than winning the SWAC.
And with that being said, that was my next question. And like I said, I know we're about to get off of here, but he has a winning season, but does not make the championship game. Where are we at with this?
Okay, it depends because here's where I'm standing. Okay, so do they go 10-1 and miss the SWAC championship, 9-2, 8-3? So if you're finishing 10-1 and your only losses to FAM or Alcorn, or well, it would have to be probably FAM because they're in the division, and that would probably end up being the tiebreaker. If your only losses to FAM, you're 10-1, you got the first FBS win for the SWAC since 1985. You probably got a resume for the playoffs if South Carolina State wins the MEAC. If it's a close loss to FAMU in week 1. I talked about this yesterday on Monday. That's a playoff resume to a point. You got an FBS win. You got a win over the MEAC champion. You got a win supposedly over Alcorn, who potentially could win the other division. A close loss to FAMU. So at the end of the day, okay. Let me say this. There's some unreasonable fans out there in every fan base. If there's a Jackson State fan who would be upset at a 8-9-10 win season with no SWAC championship appearance, the fans got to reconsider their expectations for whatever team they're rooting for. That's ridiculous. 8-9-10 win seasons don't come easy. Like, if TC wins that many games in year 1 with the roster turnover that he had to build by himself, man, they better give that man an extension.
I'm with you. But the expectations that I think they have or, for lack of a better way to put it, are kind of far-fetched. To run the table undefeated, it's tough. I don't think people really understand how tough it is to win a game, let alone going 13-0.
I will say, I don't know if that's the expectation for most fans. I will say there's probably one or two out there that have been very vocal that have loud voices on certain platforms and everything that will probably scream that it's undefeated or bust. But the average fan is not expecting an undefeated season. Like, I don't think that's the expectation for a majority of Jackson fans for that I've talked to. I'll let me just say that are in the chat right now that I've talked to personally. I don't think that's the expectation outside of a few unreasonable fans. And it's the same fans at every fan base. There's fans out there that think, man, that FAMU is going to go 13-0 with the win over South Florida. There's fans who think Alcorn might go 13-0 with a win over Southern Miss. Like, there's fans in every fan base that think that, but I think the majority of fans just want him to continue the standard, whether that's finishing 9-2, whether that's going 8-3, potentially still making the run. I just think the only time that people will be looking at him sideways is, one, if it's like KJ said, where they lose the wrong games, or two, a losing record would hurt. Let's just put it out there. I mean, a losing record would hurt. That I don't think Jackson would take that very well. Outside of those two things, I don't think people are going to be looking at TC Taylor sideways.
And again, I have nothing but love for TC, and I was going to poke, but I'm not going to poke. But I'll say that for another show. Don't want to give bulletin board material, but I think it could be really good early, or it could be really bad early.
I love how their schedule's set out, because we find out exactly what Jackson has the first 4 weeks of the season.
Early.
That's it. Listen, it makes my job as an analyst, someone who makes predictions and likes to hang my hat on how accurate I am. Man, I will be able to pick Jackson's schedule barring significant injury. As soon as that fourth game's over, I'm going to give you a record prediction for Jackson the rest of the year, because I know exactly what Jackson's going to be after the first 4 games. I mean, okay, I'll say this. I gave Jackson a lot of flack the past 2 seasons for not having a difficult schedule the past 2 years. This year, that's not the case. You get a really sneaky South Carolina State team with a legendary HBCU coach and Buddy Pugh, who came off a bad season. And they're going to be motivated to put up or shut up this year. And they know they're fighting for Pugh's kind of just his
Legacy.
continuation of his legacy. Yeah, we'll put it like that. Then you got a FAMU team who they've been beaten in for years now. The FAMU hasn't won a game since, like, I want to say someone said since LeBron was drafted. And Willie's been talking, FAMU fans have been talking. They think they built their team specifically to beat Jackson. You're going to get everything you got there. Then I said it, well, no, then you got at Southern. We talked about that, how big of a game that is, even though it's non-conference. We know how big that rivalry is. And then the fourth game, I said this because I feel like FAMU and Jackson, there's a lot of SWAC fans that they're looking at the South Florida FAMU game and the Texas State Jackson game as almost like, we need one of those teams to win. Just because, man, that streak is getting real long, where you're sitting at 84, 85 since the last time a SWAC team beat an FBS team. And then I even had people on Monday's episode talk about Southern Miss, Alcorn State. Like, those three games are the ones that keep getting brought up. And then someone mentioned Texas Southern Rice too, if I'm not mistaken, as another one that could be a potentially close game. Everyone's putting their chips, like everyone, even people who hate Jackson, who might be Southern, Alcorn fans, whatever, they want to see Jackson knock off Texas State.
I guarantee you nobody from Alcorn wants to see that. I'm playing.
Okay, excluding Alcorn, but I've had some other HBCU fans say that's important for the conference's perception overall.
No doubt. All three of us to go out and put up a good showing. A couple years ago, we had the opportunity to knock off Southern Miss and, call here or there. It's part of football. But like you said, the years are growing. And, we feel like now that level is starting to level out. It's not much difference. Group of five, us. So, to see either one of those teams plus us do that would be tremendous. But just to get back to where we were, for Coach Taylor to start out 0-2, man, where's the fire department when you need them? Because it's gonna be hectic.
That FAMU game is important. I will say that, and I will say too, the reason that I say it's so important, because there's some people who don't understand why I think winning those games are important. The money, the quote unquote money games against a lower group of five schools. It's because this is the sense I got, because I had a segment this season. And I kind of saw the comments, and I felt like there were some SWAC fans who saw because no one's really surprised when the North Dakota States, the Montana, like the big, powerful FCS teams, when they beat teams like that, that's expected. But when you see teams who are not great at FCS football start getting those upsets, and you're sitting here wondering why our teams could compete with that team, we think, right, on paper, and they're going to get FBS wins, but none of us can compete.
And again, football, and the difference is still up front. It's not skill, it's still up front. Even at that level, lower group of five, us, it's still up front. More so on the offensive line side. But that game becomes or has become more important because essentially that's who we now become recruiting foes against. We find ourselves in more battles versus the USMs, the La Techs, the MAC schools, things like that. And we started to win some of those battles. So now, in order to continue to win those battles, we've got to start winning some of those games, no doubt. Being competitive in some of those games, and I guess almost say it's almost time past the competitive to where, okay, now, as my boy Sam said, Coach Wash, bring me my money.
Exactly.
Is on deck now. So we're gonna try to do our part. I know they're gonna do their part as well. And no good showing is a good showing unless it's a W. That's just how it is as a coach. We want to win. We don't want to go and lose by 7. We want to go and win by, that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
games are important.
I'm with you. And I think my like final point on this is why I think it's important. The one thing you can't do, because I know you said it's all about wins. The biggest thing to me is you cannot get blown out. If because the way I'm looking at it is like an average fan would is if let's just say you can say your top 3 teams in the SWAC or whoever, but preseason wise in terms of hype, FAMU, Jackson, and Alcorn are near or at the top of the top
We're
3 teams in the
bottom.
SWAC. Yeah.
We're bottom.
Okay, my bad. Alcorn's at the bottom, but you know what I mean. Preseason hype, those are 3 of the most talked about teams that should be able to compete. If those 3 teams go out and get boat raced by 3 teams that are not at the top of the group of 5. You're not playing the James Madisons, the Appalachian States, or whoever. You're playing 3 teams that have historically not been very good, especially Texas State. And shout out to my guy Kenny. We'll see he gets it turned around. He got a great staff, had a lot of recruiting. We'll see. But those games should at least be competitive. The worst thing in the world for the SWAC would be FAM goes and gets blown out by 20. Jackson loses by 20 or 30. You guys get blown out by 20 or 30. That to me, man, it's like if they can't get it done, who do we put the chips on?
If
Do
not
we have?
them, who?
Yeah, like there's no one else. It's almost looked at as if our best can't get it done. Do we put the chips on UAPB to go get it done? Probably not. Valley doesn't play an FBS school. I mean, is Alabama State going to go knock off? I don't even know who their out of conference game is this year. They got 2 D2s. I don't know if they play an FBS this year, or can Alabama A&M go beat Vandy? I don't know. That's a big question mark. So it's there's no one else to look to. Now next year, we'll see what TC does. I want to see what this team looks like this year. But that ULM game should be interesting given how close it was 2 years ago. We'll see kind of what that team looks like this year. But it has to be a dogfight at least. If you can't get the win, you have to do like Duquesne or St. Francis did. Like you got to take it to overtime. You got a 1 possession game, whatever. But
Gotta
you
get it to
cannot get blown out. Because there was someone in the chat who said it was a Jackson fan who said that he was rooting for Alcorn against Tulane, but at that time, no one knew how good Tulane was at that point.
They went and beat USC, so
yeah. So like he said that he was mad after the game, but then it kind of worked itself out at the end. I mean, when you go win a New Year's Six bowl, that team's just unbelievable. Michael Pratt, no one knew that was coming.
But I'll tell you this about that game that we later found out because they have such a big support staff. And this is true. As an assistant coach came up from Tulane, came up to me and was like, "Hey, coach, y'all go win it, but you've got to make sure you hide your signals off of camera. We knew everything you guys were going to do before you did it, and that's having that support staff from not just your 11 coaches, but then you've got analysts after GA after GA who sit there and that's all they do is study those things. Not giving us an excuse or anything like that, but when they knew it was pass, they played the pass. When they knew it was run, they played run. But to get boat raced by them in the beginning was disheartening, but to see the season that they put together was like, oh, those cats pretty good.
All right, yeah, cool. It's like it makes us feel a little bit better, but not necessarily. But yeah, a big season. But for all the new coaches, I think there's some like we talked about. You just got to get through the season. It's 2024 for you. I mean, but there's some. You look at Vincent Brown. He's going to have some expectations. TC is going to be expected to compete for the SWAC, but for the most part, I feel like there's not a lot of super high expectations outside of maybe Vincent Brown and TC. Everyone else is more, we just want to see something. We want to see a step in the right direction for 2024. We don't expect you to win it this year.
Make it interesting.
Yeah. Like A&T, no one expects them to win the CAA. I'm not saying that, but because you fired a head coach who was 1 game away from winning the Big South last year, who won 7 games, who potentially could have been in the playoffs, you put that expectation on yourself now. And that's why I do agree with you. I think it was 1 year too early because, yes, you want to compete. You want to get Vincent Brown in as soon as possible for him to start building his culture. But what you did is you left it was like you left it up to the fans' imagination on what he could do with one more year. Yeah, so if you would have let him stay, listen, we don't know what would have happened. Maybe if you keep everything the same, A&T still goes and is not good in the CAA, and then you make that move, and it is what it is. But now that you left it up to your imagination, if Vincent Brown goes out there and wins 3-4 games, people are looking like, well, would Sam have won 5, maybe 6? Because he did last year in a different conference per se, but that's not what the fans are looking at. They're going to look at results on the field, not really get into the intricate details. So you left it up to your fans' imagination. So now they kind of have something to hang their hat on if you don't meet that same expectation.
Yep. And the what ifs come out.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. But Coach, man, it was so good to hop back on here, man. Me and Coach are gonna have the Coach's Corner more consistently, man. Do a live stream, and it'll be more HBCU focused rather than strictly national FCS until the season, man. Then we'll get back into our predictions, film breakdown. Expect to see more coaches on with us, man. We're really going to expand our guests and kind of get things moving in the right direction for the Coach's Corner, man. But make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned for more content. You can get more content on the website, thebluebloodcfb.com. Media days are coming soon. There's going to be so much media day content. I promise you guys aren't going to know what to do with it. But until next time, guys, for my guy, Coach Fred, for myself, and for the Blue Bloods, man, we are out for right now.